Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Caroline Makes Cards. We all love it when we can get 2 cards out of 1. But how about 3? After making the first card featuring Simon Says Stamps Cosmo Flower Petals, I had 2 backgrounds that were perfect for making additional cards. So let's get started. I began by ink blending 2 pieces of Bristol Smooth cardstock with Distress Oxide inks. I started off with panels that were sized 4 inches by 9 inches, which I would later cut down. I used some temporary glue dots to hold the panels stable while I do my blending. To create my rainbow background, I'm working with 6 colors: Picked Raspberry, Squeezed Lemonade, Mowed Lawn, Mermaid Lagoon, Chipped Sapphire, and Wilted Violet. I want the panels to be more or less the same, so I start off by just laying down bands of color. Now that the colors are laid out, I work on the panels individually. I go back and forth between the colors until I have a nice smooth transition. For my first card, I'm going to create a spattered background using rainbow colors. I am spattering in a spatter box, otherwise I end up with a mess everywhere. Using a smaller paintbrush, I apply distress stains to create a small to medium spatter. Periodically, I reference the ink blended panel so I can try to align to some degree the spatter of the colors. I'm working with distress stains. I didn't have all the colors that match the Distress Oxide ink, so I obviously just had to go with what I had. Somehow I managed to get a little bit of the yellow stain on the lower right-hand corner. I figured with all the spatter and then with the addition of the flowers that it would disguise it enough, so I just didn't really worry about it. I figure a blemish here and there just reminds us that it's a handmade card. And so now to work with the Cosmo Flower Petals die set. This set comes with 3 petals, a base, and then a coordinating detail die. And it of course comes with the flower center base and then a detail die for that. Working with the 3 panels lined up together, I die cut my flower petals so that I could get the base and the detail aligned with the spatter. To make it easier, I lined up the 3 base petals the way I wanted them and then used some purple tape to hold it together. I then put the detail dies on top so that they would line up with that and taped those together. The base flower petals were also cut from foam. Each time I die cut the 3 petals, I stacked them together and then laid them out on my spattered panel before I continued to the next 3. Each petal is unique, however the differences to my eye are minor, and I didn't want to end up with this big pile of petals and details and foam and trying to figure all that out, so it was just easier for me to just stack them as I go. Laying out the flowers also helped me to figure out exactly what I needed. I continued working in sets of 3 and filling in my background panel. Having the panels lined up side by side allows me to get the dies more or less in the same position. The petals and their coordinating detail will be approximately the same color. When the 3 main flowers are completed, I add in some additional petals where they are needed to make those flowers fuller. I also add some additional groupings of petals to trail off the edge of the card to fill in the background. With all the petals assembled, I fiddle with the arrangement a bit before gluing them down. Anything that is foam back can slip around on the panel. So before I trim off the overhanging petals, I put my MISTI on top and let it dry completely. This way, the foam petals and the backing will have good contact. This card was finished up with a sentiment from Simon Says stamp, Sending Smiles. For this 2-piece die set, the shadow die was done in vellum. I then cut Sending Smiles in white cardstock and stacked it on foam. The panel was mounted on a card base that measured 9 inches by 3 3/4 inches. So now for the 2 rainbow die cut panels that were left over from the previous card. I die cut them with the largest of Simon Says Stamps slimline scallop frame. This die produces a rectangular panel and a separate scalloped frame. One panel was mounted on white cardstock while the other one was mounted on black. I also die cut the scalloped frame in white and in black. The rectangular panels were mounted on white sheet foam. Several of the detail petals were die cut for each of the cards. So this bit was pretty much like putting a puzzle together. I have to say that I surprised myself. This wasn't as time consuming as I thought it would be. It was actually pretty easy for me to figure out which petal went into which opening. Miracles never cease. After the overhanging petals were trimmed off, they were mounted on card bases that measured 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. The scalloped frame was adhered around the panel. For the white card, I used the happy birthday sentiment that accompanies the slimline scallop frame die set. For the black card, I used Simon Says Stamps Chunky Happy. This die cut produces a frame of the word happy, which I did in black. Rainbow patterned paper was used for the letters. And that wraps up my 3-for-1 card featuring Simon Says Stamps Cosmo Flower Petals. As always, I appreciate your visit.